ACC, and I'm going to let him give the mic over to him to say a couple of words and talk about this process as well. So, David.
Thank you, Mr. Stockton. So good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Career Center project. This is meeting number 1. Welcome to the BLPC we have here. We have the PFRC, and we have community members as well, along with staff to help facilitate the meeting tonight. So I'm the liaison, the school board liaison for this project. So that means that I'll interact with the community, with the staff, and report back to the other members of the school board for this project. So for those of you who need a brief history and a refresher, or a refresher for those of you who followed the process, we had a Career Center working group which meticulously created a framework to expand the Career Center. That was followed by a BLPC PFRC process for the design and construction of that of the Career Center, which got nixed because the cost was too high for what the process came away with. So as a result, we did an after action analysis of the process and what went awry. And we have changed the format. We've changed the number of meetings. We've assigned homework. We've removed the architect from the meetings. So you're about to go through the new and improved process. So just to set it straight, so our goals for this process are the superintendent will include a project in his proposed CIP in May that fits within the budget that we have. With our goals, we provide some options based on the proposal in the charge. We acknowledge the homework. This project has been in the CIP for decades, and we must move forward to address the needs of the full-time students already at the site. And we want the facilities to work with the neighborhood. So as I mentioned earlier, the after action suggested several things that led to the last project coming in over cost. And so we restructured things in the following ways. So facility and operations, those are our experts. County staff and PFRC, they are partners in our work and help us anticipate things that will help move this project through the county's approval process. As you saw, Mr. Brian Stockton, the Chief of Staff, is facilitating these meetings, so it allows the other staff to focus on their roles as experts in design and construction and et cetera. So I need to emphasize that this work is focused on school building and parking garage, which we will get into tonight. And I have a list of things I need to make sure that's clear. So just want to make sure you know that the school board is committed to keeping the number of students and staff on the site manageable. When the new school building is completed, the old facility will be available for other uses, but time is needed to plan for that development of the site after the new building. The long-term piece is not part of the charge, but it must be stated that the superintendent's proposed CIP this year, the 2023 to 32 CIP, will include a study identifying potential long-term use options for the entire Career Center campus. And we want to maintain the maximum student capacity at 2,570 seats. So with that, I want to thank our PFRC chair, Sarah Steinberger, and our BLPC chair, Ted Black. We have County Board Liaison, Takas Karantonis, with us tonight. And I'd like to recognize School Board Vice Chair Reed Goldstein, who's joining us as well. So without further ado, Brian, Mr. Stockton, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Before I get started, I just rushed into everything. I'm Brian Stockton, the Chief of Staff here at Arlington Public Schools, and I'll be facilitating this process. Just a little background on myself. I've been with Arlington since July 15th of 2020. Prior to that, I was Assistant Commissioner over District Operations for the Tennessee Department of Education. And prior to that, I was Chief of Staff for the school system in Memphis, about 170 schools, about 14,000 employees there. When I arrived here at APS, the first thing that was given to me, I think my second week on the job, was the after action for the Arlington Career Center. So I, along with John Mickelweiss, our auditor, performed the after action. And so again, as David pointed out, there are a lot of improvements for this process that we learned from the last process. But I must say this, I think some members are a lot of returning members. We have some new members, but all I would have to say is that this is the group that will get it done. We did some research this morning. We have been working on the Arlington Career Center for 3 previous superintendents. We would not add Dr. Duran to that list. We will get this done, and this will be the group to get us there. So without further ado, let me just keep going. We're going to go to the, let's say, slide 3. There, just want to say you all received tonight's agenda. Also, please note we combined 2, if you look at the agenda, we combined 2 items from 7:15 to 8:45 to help with the logistics of breakout rooms in the virtual meeting. Breakout groups will cover both topics of siting and transportation in a single breakout session this evening. Perfect. Next slide. So also let's talk about the logistics, a little bit more house cleaning. For the virtual meeting logistics, we're recording the meetings and breakout sessions, and we'll post so others can hear the discussion. Please mute your phones, mute your microphones when not speaking to keep background noise to a minimum. Use the chat. Open in now that you can enter comment. It's open now, and you can actually enter comments here when it's not your turn to speak, and staff are monitoring the chat box. I'm keeping time so that we can accomplish our goals at the end of 9 o'clock this evening. We want to hear from everyone, so we've set up the meeting and breakout groups to ensure time and space to get input from each the BLPC and the PFRC. Also want to note that at the end of the presentation, I'll come back this evening, all resources for this process are posted on our Engage webpage. Again, we'll show that link at the end of this meeting as well. But it's important to go to that link because BLPC and PRC members could use this as a resource to prepare for their own meetings, gather and provide input for the stakeholders you represent, and others can use the same resource to provide feedback as well. So, perfect. As I mentioned, as I first open up, here, basically, we're going to have, there are different levels of engagement. Actually, tonight, we're going to focus on consult. Basically, at this stage of the BLPC PFRC process seeks stakeholder input on the preliminary concept design. Feedback on analysis, alternatives, and/or decisions will refine the concept design submitted for school board approval in April of 2022. Perfect. So the role of the BLPC and PFRC members. Some members of the BLPC and PFRC are returning, have worked on this project for years, and we appreciate the many years that you've worked on this and continue to see this project to completion. We also have new members, as I mentioned before, and we welcome you aboard. But as I said before, all of you are critical to this process. This is the group that will get it done. The BLPC and PFRC members bring the stakeholder perspective that will help us refine the concept design and make the site work for students, staff, families, neighbors, and Arlington. And again, I know I've mentioned 4 to 5 different groups, but again, it's for the students, you all. And I've asked, me personally, that you bring your best thinking to each one of these meetings, bring your best thinking to the breakout group, no self-interest, just the best thinking with students at the center of what we do to make this happen. The process has a limited amount of meetings. Part of the career after action that was performed, we did on average, I think when you Arlington built Fleet, I think there were like 26 meetings. When you did HB Woodlawn, there were 25 meetings. And the average around the nation is about 5 meetings. And so again, we're going to run a tight ship. However, if we feel that we need to add a meeting just to get everything done, we will do so. But we're going to do our best. That's why we're providing the homework in advance. Hoping everyone does their homework to make sure we can get it done in 5 meetings. Also requesting that all members prepare in advance of meetings, follow up afterwards, and chairs will talk more about this at the end of the meeting. When sharing your thoughts, especially outside of the meeting, please let us know the stakeholder group you represent. Staff state requests in the positive and also presume positive intent of others. So again, I just want this to be good natured, and so we can get this done and come up with the best building for our students and also for our community. All right, perfect.
62 people.
So for public comment, we also like to welcome our community participants. We have 10 minutes for public comment at the end. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak. If you wish to speak during public comment, let us know in the chat now if you would like. Daryl will put you in the queue, and at the end, actually, Daryl will kind of roll through the list of people who've wanted to give public comment, and we will actually go through those comments at the last 10 minutes of this evening. If public comment exceeds the allotted time, you can send, of course, your comments to the Engage page as well. The link is posted there. Also, let's talk about the Arlington Career Center project itself. Everything you review will be within budget. I think David stated that as well, and address the project requirements and educational specifications. The school board has made it clear that it will not consider a project that exceeds cost. Your input will help improve how these new schools and the parking garage fit on the site and in connection with the surrounding neighborhood. Also, the school board has defined that we bring 2 options for this project. Base plan accounts for a maximum capacity of about 1,800 seats, and the alternative plan is smaller, plans for 1,300 plus seats. And so that will be part of our charge to get this done. As far as the scope is concerned, all right. The project builds from, this project, again, I've mentioned earlier that there are some returning members, there are some new members, but for the returning members, this project builds on prior processes and moves beyond some hurdles. The Career Center Working Group provided guidance on massing and density and discuss those further. I'll discuss those further in a bit. Last BLPC process had to keep all the buildings, We're now planning to relocate ACHS to another site. Expansion is focused on adding to existing building while operating the school, and this process defines ACC as an option school as well. The school board direction for upcoming CIP in this process moves ACHS off the site and builds a new school for the Arlington Career Center. In addition, I want to talk about the school board's direction. The school board's direction for this superintendent CIP makes it clear that they want to keep total enrollment on the campus manageable, as David stated earlier. This group would not be discussing the field or the existing Arlington Career Center or the MPSA buildings. There's a study underway that will set up the next CIP. It will consider which buildings remain on the site for the long term. The desire to raise the MPSA building was discussed repeatedly by the Career Center Working Group. At that time, enrollment was growing significantly, and we could not consider taking any school offline. The school board direction recognizes that we're in a better state and allows the use of the site to be explored in preparation for the 2025-2032 CIP. The community facility study identified a need to be strategic about facilities, especially with limited land, changing demographics, and limited tax base. We continue to have a lot of uncertainty in the long-term projections, and we may not truly understand the impact of the pandemic on enrollment for some time. A larger Arlington Career Center facility will provide flexibility in addressing middle and high school enrollment as well. So I went through a lot pretty fast, so I just want to do a little house cleaning there. But before we get started, I want to acknowledge our staff. I want to acknowledge Daryl Johnson, Lisa Stingle, Ben, and also Jeff Chambers of working, and also David Pretty as well for working with us as well on this project to make sure this goes smooth. But before we get started, wanted to basically acknowledge, again, I've already acknowledged David Pretty. Also, I would like to acknowledge Takas Karatonis. Takas, I think I see, if you raise your hand there. And so Takas, also the chairs of the BLPC, the chair of the BLPC, Ted Black, and also the PFRC chair, Sarah Steinberger as well. Also, Jeff Chambers, who I'm about to bring up, he's our director of design and construction. Basically, he's been a vital part of this process too. So what I would like to do now is actually bring Jeff up to talk about the design and see if you have any questions from there. Jeff?
Thank you, Brian. I want to make sure that we bring up some of the comments or some of the issues that we want you to be discussing in your breakout groups tonight. discussion topic should build on the information that was provided prior to the meeting in your homework. So you should be building upon that in your discussion groups this evening. Think in terms of the principles of civic design as you discuss things this evening, and to focus on the building height, the location of the parking structure, strength and concerns with the preliminary site plan and transportation goals and safety, and also provide views on the transportation and safety concerns. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry about that. I was one slide ahead. Next slide, please. Make sure I'm in the right place. If you had done your homework, you had looked at the preliminary site plan diagram, which was presented as part of that, as well as what the school board reviewed. We're working with the same information. We're not providing new drawings this evening. And with regard to that, if you recall, and for those who haven't seen the work up front, the blue building along Walter Reed at the bottom right-hand corner of the plan is the proposed location of the new building. To the left of that, you can see a gray structure. That is the existing career center, the darker gray being the county library. The red dotted area is what is being part of the existing building that is intended to be removed. And the tan structure is the location of a parking structure that would be provided along 9th Street. In the middle, in the green area that says field, that would be the field that would be provided as part of the initial work. The white structure with the outline is the MPSA building. And one of the things that needs to be mentioned up front is the green square between the Montessori building and the new structure is showing the MPSA playground. Part of the conversation with the board and with Montessori is the play area completely surrounding that building will be redone before the work would start as part of that. I think that the things that we need to do is making sure that with regard to civic values, we are respecting the civic values, respecting the neighborhood context, optimizing the open space for public relaxation and recreation in addition to the school uses, and minimize the building footprint and areas used for parking on side roads and service drives. I think the preliminary site plan was built upon the Career Center Working Group, providing guidance in the massing and the density of the building. I wanted to note that the BLPC PFRC process is not defining the project requirements that are built into the work. It will be the ed specs are the basis for that. And to remind everyone that the Arlington Career Center is an option school. Specification with specifications that are built specifically for it, similar to HB Woodlawn, however, with a career and technology education focus. Siting and orientation to make sure that the project is oriented with the primary entrance appropriate on street or public space, so movement and entrance to the buildings are natural and intuitive. To emphasize that pedestrians, bicycles, mass transit over automobiles are prioritized and included in the building placement and entry and architecture, and ensure that the building and site are functionally spatially coherent, facilitating the flow of people to, from, and within the site, and it creates positive outdoor spaces with a pedestrian emphasis. Next slide, please. Oops. Next slide, please. Okay. With regard to the building massing that was provided as part of the board's conversation, The preliminary site plan is proposing a 5-story building along South Walter Reed Drive. That was the blue box in the plan previously shown, and that stepped down to a 2-story portion adjacent to 7th Street. Each story would be approximately 15 feet in building height, translating to about 75 feet for a 5-story building, and if it would go to a 6-story building, would be 90 feet. That is something to consider. With the taller we go, the smaller the footprint could be. The Career Center Working Group had reached a consensus just for sake of discussion, supporting a building height of 3 to 4 stories along Walter Reed and stepping up to 6 to 7 stories along the southern end closest to 9th Street. And I want to remind everyone that the project is located within the S3A zoning district, and the county board at the time of approving the use permit can modify building setback and height provided certain conditions are satisfied. They can also modify the setbacks of how far it is from property lines, etc. The placement of the parking structure, which is on 9th Street, is shown on the plan, is intended to remain, but could be refined based on feedback received during the process. The design team will be developing a site plan and building massing based on a variety of inputs, including stakeholder feedback that we're working towards through these meetings. Next slide, please. As noted, that with regard to the project and your discussions, the PFRC principles of civic design related to the breakout discussion should be, again, to respect the neighborhood context, optimize the open space, and emphasize pedestrians, bicycles, and mass transit. And as noted, that the main entry for the building is currently shown on Walter Reed. The campus bus operations, this would be with regard to the transportation discussion. The intent as part of the initial sketch that you are looking at was with the campus bus operations to occur on a private drive on site, which would also include service areas would also be accessed on site. Parent pickup and drop off is not specifically identified, but is intended to be surrounding the site and not on the site with a specific driveway specially built for that. And as noted, the service access for the new building would occur via that private drive as well. And the on-site parking is accommodated within the above-ground structure at South Highland and 9th Street in the Brown area. Next slide, please. Some of the transportation project goals that should be part of your conversation is specifically the safety of students, routes to and from the building, reducing conflicts with other transportation needs such as cars and buses, and careful design between county needs and school needs, making sure to work with the Walter Reed plans. The right sizing of transportation infrastructure would be the other project goal. Help determine the correct amount of space dedicated to transportation on site without the need to overbuild, and building spaces that are specifically built for cars and vehicles when existing infrastructure could support that, and determine which demands can be reasonably accommodated off-site. Third is minimizing impacts, develop strategies to reduce people driving to and from this site, spreading out transportation demands both in time and location that could reduce the impact and safety concerns on site, and to determine any changes to existing and proposed transportation infrastructure. You know, for instance, do we need to upgrade an intersection or a traffic signal? Next slide, please. One of the comments that had been brought up in the last process, or the beginning process, was Are we considering current conditions with MPSA in the building? During the fall, consultants did collect additional information, transportation data, and that was shared with the committee members as part of the homework that was provided. And they also did field observations and summaries, including presentation materials that were provided. Takeaways for the concept design is to identify, and the things that we need you to talk about is, again, identifying the safe routes for walkers, cyclists to take advantage of the county's Walter Reed plans. The design team will work with the county to take advantage of that. So it is not forgotten. We will be working with the county as we move forward. And the Walter Reed will also need to serve not only the building, but also the library as long as it is on site. And the existing Career Center building potentially would be served by that as well. I think we want to make sure that we do develop clear and separate bus and student pickup and drop-off locations, providing as many options as we can for loading and unloading as needed. And again, avoid the conflicts. Conflicts are a safety concern, and we want to be able to avoid safety concerns at all costs. So at this point, I'll turn it back to Brian.
Thank you, Jeff. A couple of things before I move on to discuss the breakout groups. Want to recognize one other person. We do have a new Assistant Superintendent of Facilities and Operations, Renee Harber. This is a process that she would normally run, but we're going to run it with her this time to get it right. But I just want to acknowledge Renee as well in this call, and I think we already recognize Reed Goldstein as well. One other thing, I wanted to also give an apology. I used MPSA and ACC. I used all those. There was a lot of APS speak, so let me apologize for that. And so basically, again, the MPSA is really the Montessori Public School of Arlington. ACC is Arlington Career Center. So please forgive me for using, I would say, our APS speak in this process. So we'll definitely be more cognizant going forward. So with that, we're about to go into our breakout groups. And just before I go through just the logistics, apologize, see like I started. And also I need to make an announcement. I need everyone to mute their microphones.
Yeah, Brian, there was a little glitch on people returning, so I think there's some people have to log out and come back in.
Okay, perfect. Well, let me give like another second. Let's see how people come in. Sorry about that, Steve. 1 second. Okay. All right, I think we have most of the people. So since we have everyone, what we're going to do right now for the next, I want to do for the next 15 minutes, is each have the note taker from each group to make, report out on just one point from their discussion. The following note takers from the following groups, if you hear the same item, so I would suggest if you have another thought or point that you would like to share with us. So I'm going to go back to Steve, and Steve is from group 1. Steve, if you could share one point that you guys made in that breakout group.
So for the height of the new ACC facility, there was concern about a 5-story building towering over Walter Reed. And the suggestion was that it would be better if it was consolidated on the corner of Walter Reed and 9th as the previous options were.
Okay, perfect. All right, thanks, Steve. The breakout with the note taker for breakout group 2, if you could share one point from your discussion.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't officially have a note taker, but we tried to make do. But one is a concern about the shadow. If we went higher up to the 6 stories, but potentially maybe stepping it where you might have maybe 6 stories on the south side, closer to Columbia Pike, and then step it down and give some green space on that lower level, and also avoid the shadow on Montessori.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chair Black. for that. Also, the note taker for breakout group 3.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's my group. We also didn't have a note taker, so I was doubling tasks there. But I think for the most part, for all 5 of the questions, I heard a lot of need for accessibility, not just ADA, but just pick up and drop off for students, both with the Montessori school, but also with the Career Center. And also I heard a lot of concern for a lot of pressure being put on South Highland Street. So I think that pretty much sums it up. Those 2 points resonated well throughout the 5 questions. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Brett. The note taker for group 4.
Hi, this is Olivia. So kind of building off of Brett's, we also heard concerns about congestion along Highland Street. So a lot of the discussion centered around alternative ways to get to the site, including considering using or expanding the ART bus system, encouraging a shuttle system, and taking a closer look at bike lanes for students to get to the site.
Perfect. Thank you, Olivia, for that. All right. Note taker for breakout group 5.
So I'm substituting for our note taker because they're projecting. And we are echoing what we're hearing from the other groups, but just considering the fact that this is a very small, unique site, with it being a countywide option for both the ACC site as well as the Montessori site. So ensuring that we are really taking into consideration the unique travel system with the students coming in from other schools throughout the day. For the CTE, to access the CTE piece, as that also needs to be factored into the transportation. So you have the students who are there located throughout the day as well as those who are transporting into the site throughout the day from other schools.
Okay, thank you, Renee.
You're welcome.
We're going to do a review of the meeting, but I see now we need to make sure we have note takers. So the note taker from breakout group 6. Or is there anyone from breakout group 6 who wants to share one of their points?
I'm sorry, I thought I was on mute. I guess yes, Lois here, ready to share. Delighted that some of our other ideas have already been said, so I'd like to highlight an idea that came up under transportation, with the note that the location of the loading dock is right at the heart of the site. And this is the loading dock in the new blue building. And that is always going to have to be an access point. It will always reduce flexibility going forward at that site. It requires large turning circles and so on, limits function. And then as we dug further in discussion, we thought about the fact that it would likely be co-located with the CAR program. Okay. And as that's an integral part of what happens at the Career Center, it might actually be, it's a key function of the school. It might actually be something that could be prominent and made more accessible, like along Walter Reed, be something that would be more appealing, that would draw people in the way a car dealership draws in the eye with its fancy doors and so on.
Bring them in. All right, thank you, Lois. And sure. Also the note taker from group 7.
Hi, this is Robert Ruiz. So among the bigger issues that Group 7 identified was movement and flow across all users on this site, such as the library, MPSA, etc., to the site and inside the site. It was noted that we need to consider transportation and their impact to neighborhoods, to the surrounding neighborhoods as well.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. As I said before, I roved around a little bit and I saw there were robust discussions, and also I see that a lot of good points came out of it. So thank you for the input. Thank you for bringing your best thinking tonight. Also, I just want to remind everyone that the notes will be compiled and posted on the website as well. So I just want to make sure that everything will be put together and everyone can review the different groups, the breakout groups, conversations that they had this evening. With that, I would like to turn it over to Ted Black and also Sarah Steinberger as well, to basically just want to talk to a couple of things with you about the process. So I'm gonna give it over to Ted and Sarah, and Ted is the chair of the BLPC and also a note taker. So Ted, I'll give it over to you.
Hi guys, Ted, I think that with the bullets here, I'll cover the first two and then I'll turn it over to you if that's okay.
That's totally fine.
No, not a problem. We only sort of just, coordinated that. But really, so the first point is really for reiterating, and I think you heard this in the breakouts, and I certainly made this point to my breakout group, that the members here are representing key stakeholder groups. And we, it's important that we get to hear your concerns and their concerns, and you representing their concerns through you as the conduit. And, bringing the information back and making sure that they're getting feedback to you so that we can hear that. There's a limited number of meetings, intentionally so it's important to prepare in advance. This being for a career center, a APS project, saying that there is homework, I think is very apt, but there is homework. So please come prepared. And really, that's just so important. And just reiterating that I appreciate the discussions I was able to hear and get a sense for this evening. So I think we're already well on our way to bullet number 2 there. So thank you. And Ted.
Thank you, Sarah. So we really appreciate everyone's experience and expertise in relationship to your stakeholder groups. But we also want to make sure that you report back to them because their feedback and the community feedback is important to make this process work. And if you can, after this meeting, the materials we used are on the Engage page. And so if you can take the form that we went through with those questions and either go through that with them on your own, you can point them to the videos that are there on the page where they can get a sense of it and fill it out. As long as you make sure that they indicate who the form is coming from, whether it's a civic association, an individual, a group. But we would value that input from them as well as you as a conduit and a liaison from them, bringing their information back to us. And then finally, Sarah and I are more than happy and would love to help you as much as we can. So if you have concerns, if something's not working, if you think we should do something differently, if you want our help with something, please reach out to us and let us know about that, and we'll do all that we can to help you to be successful in your role, so that we can be successful as a group in bringing this wonderful project to fruition, and not put Dr. Duran's name on that list that Brian shared with us to begin with. So Brian, thank you very much, and back to you.
Thank you so much, Ted. I appreciate that. And as Ted pointed out, of course, on this, we're going to start public comment, but I just want to point out again that Engage page. We'll show it again. But again, as Ted pointed out, we want this to be a good process. And we, if there's some processes that people are questioning or something doesn't seem right, let us know, because we want to get it right. Again, this will be the group that will get it done. So with that, as I promised at the beginning, that we would have a public comment. And so basically, I think early on, I did see one name in the chat, Daryl, when we got started. So I'm not sure how many you have, but I'm going to give it up to you to call out the name so we can do the 2 minutes of public comment.
Yes, we had 2 people say they wanted to do public comment. So the first one is Susan Scott, and the second one is Kurt Schooler.
Perfect.
So I'm Susan Scott. Should I just go?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Hi, and to all my neighbors and the people that volunteer, because I'm one of those people that shows up at a lot of these things and talks too much. I have to say that I'm a neighbor, but I also had kids in Arlington Public Schools and was on the committee before for this facility. I'm genuinely confused. So I do want to make a statement that if it's possible for APS to just put in writing 1 or 2 paragraphs to say, hey, this is what we had to stop doing last. And everybody was expecting this to be a high school, no middle school students, and that has just confused me. Unless I missed something, but because COVID. But if you guys could explain that in a shorter explanation. And then I think one of the big questions I had was that you guys are having 25, 70 spots there. And when we were all doing this for 4 years, it was all about high school numbers, high school bodies. So now you're talking about middle school, high school. My concern would be that we protect and continue to keep very, very vibrant the continuing education programs over there for the Career Center, for the kids that are in those different programs right now, that the growth of the programs be allowed to protect them, and that any growth that you're going to put in there not just be adding more middle and high school students to the career tech, to the whatever the career tech program is, which is fine, but I just don't want to see the Career Center get gobbled up with all those important programs. The other thing is to say that we definitely have a problem with the traffic on Highland, with lighting that I'm concerned about on Highland, but traffic and safety, as you guys look at this, I think those people on Highland are going to get really, really affected more than any other. So if there's anything else to deal with that, I would say to look at that. And then to make sure that the accessibility of anybody going to that parking structure, I'm glad that it's where it's at personally. I want to make sure that teachers have their spots protected, and that it's protected so that you can keep homeless people out of it at night. But I want to see more clarification about how kids and people with disabilities and other students and everybody who's coming from there is going to get across that campus pretty far away to all those schools. Thanks for the time. I probably went over my time allotment. I appreciate it.
No, Susan, you're fine. Thank you. You beat the clock. So thank you.
Yes. All right, next person is Mr. Kurt Schooler.
Hi, I'm Kurt Schuler. I'm from the Arlington Special Education Advisory Committee, ASAC. I have two comments. One is the building, the building number, the cost, needs to account, I assume, for inflation, because we've gone from 2% inflation, like a year and a half ago, to 7% now. So I think it's anyway. I'm curious, whether the building number is a kind of a current cost number that will be adjusted for subsequent inflation, or whether that's the number that's being expected to be spent a couple of years from now, because $1 a couple of years from now is going to be worth less, 10% less or something like that than the $1 today. That's my first comment. My second comment is that there needs, I'll be submitting some suggestions, about making the building friendly to disabled users. In general, the schools have done a fairly good job of this, but there have still been some slip-ups, that could have been avoided with a little more attention earlier in the design process. That's it.
Great, thank you, Kurt. And like I said, normally wouldn't do this, but however, Carlisle, I saw that you said you want to get 2 minutes, and so we'll stop at you.
And then I think also before her, Eileen Janice had raised her hand, so I put her on the list. But next person we have is Mr. Daniel Weir.
Hi, thank you everyone for the great meeting. I was in the working group I was in one of the working groups that discussed Walter Reed Drive items, and I just want to make sure I was reminded between then and now that and want to make sure that relevant staff and BLPC, PFRC members are aware of the pending Complete Streets improvements project for the blocks of Walter Reed between Columbia Pike and up past the site, adding a number of vitally important facilities like protected bike lanes. That is currently targeted per the project webpage for completion in 2023. And I didn't see, I might have just missed it, I didn't see reference to that in the various presentations for this meeting. And I think it would be helpful going forward if the Complete Streets facilities were noted and included in the presentations that deal with what is the status of Walter Reed Drive, so that the dots are all connected and that nothing is done at odds with that vitally important project as well. That's what I got. Yield my time. Thank you.
Daniel, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Like I said, we have, I think we have three people now, and but however, we're going to need to go like 2 minutes apiece, so we can finish on time. So Daryl, I'll let you call the next person.
The next person is Mr. John Snyder.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Snyder. I'm the chair of the Columbia Pike Partnership. We've been following this very closely for the last however many years it's been, because this facility is an opportunity to be a great asset to the broader community as well as to APS. I was surprised to see in the ed spec that I reviewed that there's no auditorium for this site. And I'm especially surprised to see that in an education spec, because in the 6 years that I served on the Facilities Advisory Commission for APS, ed specs were supposed to be the same for all schools. A chemistry lab is a chemistry lab, a cafeteria is a cafeteria, they're all the same. But now it's said that an ed spec is that this school, for some reason, some educational pedagogical reason, does not have an auditorium. I don't understand that at all. It looks more like a value judgment to me, and really a negative value judgment, in that the students and the surrounding community are simply not valued to the same extent as those in the schools that have the standard auditorium for the size of the school. This is a big problem when you choose to change your educational spec depending on where you are citing the school. It's simply not acceptable. There should be one educational specification for all the students in our APS, and not to make exceptions for those who don't live in the more fashionable neighborhoods. Thank you.
Mr. Snyder, thank you for that as well.
Next up is Ms. Eileen Jonas.
Thank you. So I'm in the Arlington Heights Civic Association in the neighborhood, so I also have been attending meetings, it seems like for decades, about this site. Seems to me that one of the big problems with the earlier procedures was the amount of restrictions that were put on the BLPC and the PRFC, saying you have to have this here, you have to have this here. You're making the same mistake again, in that you are trying to design a building that you know is not sited well for the site. If you were starting from scratch, you would not put the building along Walter Reed with the problem of facing the lower rise houses along 7th Street. The building should be parallel to the Career Center. If you imagine no Career Center and no Montessori school, you'd plan the building for the site with your high-rise part near the AT&T building, which is what the neighbors have asked for forever. The reason that the field is there is because originally that was going to be the top of the parking garage. The field could easily be next to the Montessori's playground area and by Walter Reed and 7th Street. With the building, you could still have the short end of the building facing Walter Reed with the main entrance there, but the building going the length of the site. So I think all of the restrictions that you're placing on Montessori has to be there and the Career Center has to be there. You're not looking at what this site should be for the next 150 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you. And I think Carlisle will be the last one, right?
Correct, yes.
Thanks so much for this meeting, and I really do appreciate having this conversation. I very strongly agree with the last two speakers based on the last sites. I'd also like to emphasize the need for green space in Arlington Heights. It keeps getting eaten up. We're getting buildings, we're getting AstroTurf over at TJ, and we need the green space both for the health of our children and for the climate. And so I hope that in this space that we'll get much more green space and with natural grass.
Thank you, Carlisle. Perfect. And thank you all for for the public comments. Again, this is just the time we took for the public comment. It was not a perfunctory part of this program. We will definitely, Mrs. Knight, you make a great point. We'll definitely get together as a group. We'll talk about some of the information that came out of this public comment, and I will address at the beginning of the next meeting. So thank all of you for the comments that you shared this evening with that. But what I would like to do is, again, I do want to point out that, again, community information on this project, again, I want to point out the website. This is something I said at the very beginning this evening. Again, so this website will be very helpful. It's a great resource for you when you have a meet with your different stakeholders in your communities to gather that feedback. So everything is there. But again, if you have any questions about the process or anything that you may need, as Ted pointed out earlier, let us know because we want this to go smoothly. But one other thing before I adjourn the meeting, I would like to bring up our school board member, David Pretty, just to say a couple of final words before we adjourn the meeting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Stockton. Actually, I wasn't sure how this format would work out tonight, and actually, I was supposed to flip between different groups, and I was so engaged with the group that I was in, I didn't change. So hopefully, I can read the notes. But thank you for your input. Thank you for the we can't obviously do this without taking consideration that you guys are here for a reason. So thank you very much for participating in this. We really appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So what we're going to do now, basically, we're going to adjourn the meeting, but I just want to remind people that the homework is due on February the 2nd. The details, you can find the details in that link about that, how to get the information or about the homework. So reminder of meeting 2 will take place on February the 16th from 7 to 9. The information gathered tonight through February 2nd will be used to prepare materials for meeting 2. We will continue to work on the transportation questions that Jeff shared early in the meeting. Advanced materials will be posted on February 11th. Daryl Johnson will send the meeting link, and remember to use the Engage page. But again, I would say one adjustment that we will make with this, we'll make sure everybody has a note taker. But at the same time, my everyone who provided public comment, I would like to work with our internal team to address some of those issues as we begin the next meeting to start. So with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time. This is a very important project, and thank you for sharing your time with us to kind of make it happen. So with that, thank you and have